Hello and welcome to the latest in the series of tutorials I'm putting together for Total War Warhammer and Total War games in general. So previously we've covered what am I looking at and also covering what units match up well into each other. In this battle we're going to be putting a little bit of that into practice. So I'm facing off against an enemy army which has better range units than me and a front line that is slightly better than mine. However, the armies are of equivalent value. The main difference is I have 2 units of cavalry. I'll be using this to demonstrate one of the most common and traditional tactics, which is known as hammer and anvil. Before we get into any of that, let's cover the very, very basics of deployment. So, before you start every battle, you get to choose where you put your units. Now, for the purposes of today, I have given us a flat, empty battlefield. Not all of them will be though, so you may need to move your troops around a bit. And to do that, it's incredibly simple. All you do, select either the unit by left clicking on it, or select the unit's car by left clicking on it, and then right click at a point on the battlefield. There, if the unit can move there, it will, instantaneously in the deployment phase. If you want to select several units at once, you can hold left click and drag a box around them. And then if I right click, they'll reposition to my right click position. In addition, if I want a slightly more detailed view, I can hold down right click once I've got the unit selected and drag it out. As you can see, some green markers have appeared. This tells me the shape of the unit. You'll notice that I can drag them out into an extended line, or I can make them incredibly deep. You can use this to adjust your formations as you see fit. For now, we want a relatively wide line because we want a lot of coverage. We're going to have cavalry on both sides, and we're going to have it go fairly wide. The reason we're going to have our cavalry going wide is that the enemy has ranged units, and we want to get on top of them. So, the plan here is going to be incredibly simple. We're going to send our front line up to engage the enemy. And then, while that's happening, we're going to have our cavalry go around the side. And theoretically, as all these things are not always certain, I should be able to deal with my opponent's backline before my front line has fallen, giving me time then to use my cavalry to fold what's left of them. So, without further ado, I'm going to click this button here, start battle, and we're going to get underway. So the first thing I'm doing immediately is selecting these units here, and I want to just have a quick gander at where the enemy army is. So as you can see, 3 units of swordsmen, 3 units of archers, and enemy lord. In terms of cost, our armies are about equivalent. So they're not coming to me, so I'm going to have to go to them. The thing is, I'm going to take a lot of fire on the way in. But that's just part of it. So we're going to initially get the cavalry moving. So I'm going to tell them to go off into the distance. You'll notice now that we're in a battle, those commands aren't... It's exactly the same controls, but instead of the units teleporting, they actually have to physically move there. So now I'm moving my units forwards. Now, another trick you can do when you're moving units is you can hold spacebar, which will show you where all of your move commands are going to put your units currently. So I want to put my lord near my line, so I'm going to move them up roughly into the line there. So now if I deselect them, hold the spacebar, you can see 3 units there, which will be my spearmen, and there's the marker for my lord coming in behind them. My cavalry is already getting around behind them, and because their line is nice and narrow, it's very easy for me to get around behind them. Just going to give them some slight orders just to pull them in around the sides. At this point, they're going to start panicking. What should I be pointing my crossbowmen at? Now, ideally, we can get them to turn to aim at the cavalry. That will be beneficial to us because it means our spearmen will not be being shot at. However, with the spearmen being a much better target. But we don't want to send the cavalry in before their swordsmen are engaged. If we do that, there's good odds that we're just going to take lots of damage. And they're moving. So, as you can see, they're trying to cover all the angles. So now we're just going to move a unit behind them. Again, you'll notice that their archers are not doing perfectly with their coverage here. We're just going to keep our units moving in, and again, you notice that I click and drag the line out just to make sure that I've got a nice even line spread out amongst that. And now, as my units are getting closer, I don't want their archers to fire at me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to command my cavalry to attack the enemy. To do this, I simply left-click the unit. I'm much in the same way I ordered it to attack. I'm going to just right-click on the enemy unit. Now I'm going to do a little bit of adjustment here to try and make sure that my units can get around the enemy. You'll notice that their archers have stopped firing. I still want their front line to engage with me, and I don't want these guys to be fighting swordsmen, so I'm going to pull them back for now. You'll notice that we've now completely disrupted their line. Our cavalry are much faster than their infantry, so we can just move around. Our units are engaging, as they should be. We can get stuck in. Now, again, we don't want those to be fighting swordsmen. We want them to be fighting archers, which is where they'll have a nice, easy matchup. You see, we've now got 2 units fighting 1 unit with our lords evenly matched. So cavalry here is going to get ready to come around behind and hit these enemy units before they can react. You can see that unit is now exposed, and there's no those swordsmen are trying to get stuck in there, and those swordsmen are going to get stuck in there, which means our cavalry now have free rein to attack them in the back. When a unit is attacked from behind, they're less effective in combat, they're less effective at fighting, and they take a penalty to their morale. So as you can see, their health is very rapidly falling. You can see these units' morale is pretty weak, whereas if you look at our units, they're holding. We're not expecting our front line to hold forever. It will die, which is why you've got to be relatively quick at this. You can't just leave it in. But send your cavalry in, get a couple of successes. You'll notice now large portions of the enemy army are starting to get ready to run. Ah, and you see that icon there? It went straight to a skull with a flag on it. That means that unit is shattered. If a unit runs away, it will just have that flag there, that grey flag above its icon that you can see there. That grey flag means that unit is running, but it can come back. If a unit is shattered, however, it's gone for the rest of the battle and will never return. So again, we're going to send them into there. They're nearly breaking, as you can tell from their banner is flashing, which tells me that they're getting ready to run away. So we're going to send a unit in, and they should be able to, quite quickly, discourage them. Let's make sure that our front line holds. We're going to move our units over here. And while this unit's still holding over here, we're going to send our units charging into the back of this fight here. Which should cause these swordsmen to break. You know, just their bodies have started to run. They've started to run, leaving the enemy with only their lord and 1 unit of swordsmen, which are currently holding. Remember, these forces, in terms of value, were nearly identical. I think there was about 50 gold in it. But I feel it's safe to say that if you look at how the fight's actually going, it's relatively one-sided. And all of that just comes down to the simple tactic of pin your opponent in place, and then send something in to hit them in the back. Repeat until your problems disappear. So now you'll see that we've got two units over here, and our spearmen are, like I say, that's not a good matchup for them. As we've demonstrated on our matchups video, those swordsmen will beat those spearmen eventually. But what we can do, send our cavalry around the side. Now our spearmen can engage the enemy lord to keep them away from us. One of our units is having time of it, and in we go. We've still got a unit left, and a lord to chase those down. Just keep reapplying the principle of hold the enemy in place and charge something into their back. Hold the enemy in place, charge something into their back. If you keep doing that, honestly, it will work in most scenarios. It's not always possible, and there's a couple of other concepts, but for getting started, all you need to remember, pin them in place, hit them with another unit. You don't just have to do this with cavalry. You can do it with infantry, although cavalry are well designed for it on account of them being fast and heavy, which means they hit really hard, and it's very easy to get them into the position where they can hit an enemy in the back. However, it works equally well if you do it with archers. If you can get a unit of archers behind the enemy, they can just lay volley after volley into the enemy's backs. Now, previously we mentioned that if a unit has a shield, it has quite a good chance of surviving against arrows. The shield only works if the unit is being attacked from the front. If you attack a unit from behind with arrows, the shield does nothing to protect it. So remember, pin in place, hit from behind. This is known as hammer and anvil tactics, and it's the foundation upon everything is built. You see? So their units are shattered, my lords, they're shattered, and like that, victory is declared. The enemy army is all running away. Now, at this point, if it was a campaign battle, we could run down their forces and finish them off, but this is only a skirmish for illustration purposes. So, we've won. The enemy army is running away. All of our units are still alive. And the only real difference was how we fought it. So, let's end the battle there. Thank you for your time today this is your primer on unit command and hammer and anvil tactics. So go out there and have great times, and I wish to hear back about your successful campaigns in the future. Till next time!